All right, we are live. I'm just double checking the feed to make sure everything's looking good, y'all. And we're going to get started here. I'll introduce myself and then we'll jump right into it. All right. Hey, I'm Justin Stark. I'm actually the I used to be the retirement planner here. I'm actually the owner, but I'm looking forward to chatting over a few things. And some things that I want to go over involve retirement planning, uh, but in conjunction with your Medicare today. Okay. So I'm going to pull up a quick something to share with you. And by all means, I have the live chat next to me. So if you have any questions or concerns, by all means, put those in there. Okay. I would love to engage. So, yeah, let me get my tool pulled up and then we'll jump right in. Hope everyone's doing good. We are live from our Pontotoc, Mississippi location. We are currently going to be talking about retirement planning in conjunction with your Medicare. Okay. Now, this morning, I shared a training with my team, and I want to share some snippets from that, but I want to talk about retirement planning as a whole. And I'm going to use my upcoming book to explain a few things, okay? And I'm just pulling a few references for me so to make sure that I stay on track here. So, um, in retirement, we all know that we have to transition through several things. So, people retire at different ages, but a lot of people could be retiring before age 55 or before 59 and a half, the full retirement age to be able to receive your retirement money without early withdrawal penalty. There are some exceptions to that rule for age 55, but outside of that, there's not a lot of exceptions for early retirement penalty. If you're drawing from like a 401k IRA, something to that effect. So when we look at retirement planning, we take a step back and we look at the whole picture. And we have a method that we call what we do. It's called the box top method. But when we're talking to you, say you come in for Medicare and we're looking at your entire retirement picture, you may need help with other things. There's a slew of layers to go through when you're transitioning into retirement. And one of those being, you have income to deal with. Most people retiring. I like to say it this way, and I'll go ahead and share my screen here with you. Let me zoom in a bit. So I want to show you what I'm referring to here. So I have this framework that I like to use, and it's basically what matters most to you. But at the same time, everybody has the same amount of time. So I think of these as levers. Everybody has the same amount of time, and when you go into the workforce, you are essentially trading your time for income or cash flow. Now, when you finally come to the decision of I'm going to retire, when you say you want to retire, what you are essentially saying is I no longer want to pull the lever of time to generate cash flow. I would like to pull the lever of cash or use my assets to generate cash flow. So that transition involves a change of levers here. So now instead of trading time, you want more time freedom. And hopefully you've been able to save up a pile of cash, your retirement account over time from your income. And then by making contributions over time to your 401k, to your IRA, to your SEP IRA, there's a lot of different ways you could accomplish this. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you just have a business and that business is the asset and you're unsure how to liquidate that. There are ways to create liquidation events for business owners. You can do business succession planning, which includes a lot of different things like bringing on equity partners. But for the general American, most of us are working for an employer and we are getting ready to retire. And when we are gearing up to retire, not only are we having to deal with our HR department, we're having to establish a actual retirement target date, like you want to retire on September 1st or you want to retire October 1st. Usually I recommend the first of the next month because insurance is coordinated that way typically. So now you've got to coordinate losing your employer coverage or choose to keep it for an extra 18 months by utilizing COBRA, which oftentimes means you're going to pay upwards of 100% of the entire premium, sometimes a bit more. So there's a lot of different things to consider. Now you have a different type of tax situation. Perhaps you're needing to plan for long-term care. Now you've got to deal with Medicare. And for some reason, it just appears that retirees often wait until they're getting ready to retire to make some major expenses. It could be just because they haven't been able to access their retirement funds approaching that time. And so we go through this whole process to help you out and to help give you clarity. And clarity creates confidence, and confidence makes decision making much more simple. I wouldn't say easy, but much more simple. So, what I'm showing you is how to think about what retirement is. You're transitioning from pulling time as your main function of leverage to generate cash flow. Now you're saying, I'm going to use what I have accumulated in a stockpile, and I'm going to use that lever to generate income. Because at the end of the day, cash flow is king. Okay. Cash flow is king. Cash flow gives you freedom. It allows you to have a steady flow of money into you, where a big savings is just sitting there. Now, it may be working, but hopefully it is working, because if you weren't lazy, I don't know why your money would be. So when you get into full transition and retirement planning, it involves a lot of things: Social Security coordination, Medicare coordination, or Medicare planning, Social Security planning. It involves long-term care considerations. It involves income planning. Obviously, I mentioned that, but we get into tax sequencing and required minimum distributions, controlled distributions over a certain amount of time. There's a lot of different things. Estate planning. There's lots of conversations that can and need to happen. But the biggest thing is you want a full picture. And what we utilize is the box top. And the box top is our method of taking you through some visual aids to help you understand the different layers of retirement. So, in this book coming out here soon, I talk about people not having a money problem. The majority of people have a box top problem, which is a clarity problem. There's so many things to consider in retirement. It creates what I like to refer to in business as opportunity confusion. There are so many things that you could do, opportunities, that it creates too many options, and too many options creates confusion because you're torn from what to do. Because the reality is that a lot of things could work. Now, a lot of things could work less than others, and some are more efficient than others. And so that's where sitting down with someone that does this for a living would be really handy. Now, organically in the conversation of retirement is, if I'm leaving my job and my HR department has handled my major medical, my dental, my vision, even my life insurance, my 401k, everything. You're used to a one-stop shop, if you will. And that's what we tend to position ourselves as, is we like to be your HR department, and then we just smile a little more. You know, we have a really good dialed in process where we walk you through everything step by step, and you sit down with an agent, and then you sit down with one of our retirement planners, and then you go through each stage one by one. Now, let me tell you what our box top does for you. Our method of walking you through retirement. A good framework is a box top, and the box top is the picture of the puzzle that you're trying to build. And everybody knows a good puzzle can be difficult sometimes, but it's still a really good one. And you need to build the corners first to understand the picture, right? And then you can begin to build the edges, and then the whole puzzle comes together, right? That's how our retirement planning strategy works. Is retirement's like a puzzle. And then our box top, since you don't have a picture of how to build your puzzle, we use our box top method to create the corners to your puzzle. And then we begin to create strategy conversations or planning conversations, which bring these corners and edges of your puzzle together to make that big picture. Okay. So you need all the corners and the edges to make this make sense. And what we do is we start with the corners. And corner number one is actually where the money sits. Where does your money sit? Your money is positioned on this by how easily you can reach it. Because we believe the older that you get, the more liquid your money should get. Yeah. You need more access as you get older. In addition to that, we also believe the older that you get, the safer that your money should get. Yeah. And so these corners are going to reveal to us how your money's positioned. How easily can you reach it? What do you want it to do? How is it taxed? Or how does it work? So we've got these different corners that we look at, or frameworks, to help identify any gaps or problems, and then you get clarity around that, and then the solution presents itself. It's really neat. So corner one, where does your money sit? So let's take a look at what this could look like for somebody. So I want you to look at this as a ladder right here. And the idea here is that something that is harder to reach because it's higher up requires a ladder to reach it. And so we create this liquidity ladder visual that the lower something is on this rung, the more easily it is to spend. So like checking account, cash on hand, maybe even a credit card because it's easy to swipe. Savings account would be like reserves and emergency money, CDs, that type of thing. Brokerage accounts, that could other things that could be higher on the liquidity chart here could be home equity line of credit. It could be cash value in your life insurance policy. It could be stocks, bonds, anything that has a bit of a barrier to access. And then I would put annuities, Social Security, things like that at the top here. Even your business, if you're a business owner, I would put your business at the top here because those are more like non-liquid assets. I have clients who have a lot of real estate. Technically, real estate would be considered a non-liquid asset. You'd probably put that on the top there. And what's really, really neat, see, like property and business, there you go. What's really, really neat is, though, we could draw a line from these top two here, and even the broker account, and create cash flow back to our checking account. So even though they're non-liquid, it can spit off income or cash flow that makes us more liquid over time. All right, depending on our spending habits, obviously. And so this gives you a visual of how your money works based on its position. So, like, let me read through something to make this make more sense for you. So you just picture a ladder, and at the bottom is the money that you can touch instantly, the checking account you spend from every day, right? And then one rung up is your savings, and then higher up sits your investable money. That's how you should think of that. And at the top is your long horizon protected money, something maybe not exposed to the market or volatility is typically what's considered non-liquid. You could be a client who just has land and has timber on it, and because you could cut the timber for income, that technically it'd be a big lump sum, and it would fall into capital gains, not really income tax, but it would create you more liquidity for it to go back into your checking or savings, right? So something similar to an annuity, something similar to a pension, or a business that spits off cash flow to you, whether you're getting dividends from dividend stocks, or whether you're getting owner distributions from a business, or whether you're getting a lifetime payment from an annuity or Social Security or something similar. Those are where those belong, at the top with long horizon, non-liquid periods, even though it spits out cash flow. All right. And by liquidity, I mean access to capital, access to cash. Income technically, or cash flow technically, would not fall under liquid or non-liquid. It's just considered income. So a pension and Social Security are pots that you draw down from. They're paychecks that arrive whether the market's up or down. And so that is what I meant by cash flow. Okay. Now this corner is actually really, really important because most people are bottom heavy without realizing it. Too much cash sitting in their check-in or savings account. And so the problem with that is there's no money being earned, right? So there's nothing being protected at the top. So it's losing money to inflation and to you spending it. So then there's other people who are the exact opposite, where everything is exposed to the market, nothing they can reach in a hurry. And so what the ladder does is being able to see your money on the ladder shows you the balance, right? Or the imbalance at a glance. So, and there's another question that people ask about, and it's access. How do I access my money? They've been waiting all these years to access their money. How do I access my money? And the rule is simple. You spend from the bottom up. So using the liquidity ladder, it shows you that you should be spending the money from the bottom up, and then the top replenishes the bottom for you. So you protect the top for last. So your liquid money is there to be used first, and the protected rung is the last thing you touch, not the first. All right. And you can create those intentional private pensions or cash flow strategies that spit out income for you, like I mentioned. So let me check the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything here. All right, looks like we're still good. All right, let's keep rolling. So going back to, I know you can see the chat. Sorry. Going back to a few things here. I could go. So let's just move to our next one here. So corner two. So when you're thinking about corner one, this is more around finance. We do the Medicare planning. We've been doing a big Medicare series the last few times we've done this. So I've kind of transitioned to our second conversation when we're transitioning into retirement, which is retirement planning, income planning, those types of things, even estate planning, long-term care planning, Social Security planning, you name it. All of it coordinates together in the full retirement picture. So money gives you three different levers, and you need to figure out which matters most to you. And the majority of people, cash flow is the most important. Okay. Cash flow and time. So time, think of it like freedom and horizon, the years before you need the money and the peace that comes from not worrying about it. Cash flow is just simple. It's income, a dependable stream that shows up whether the market's up or down. Doesn't matter, right? You get a check. And then cash is just a lump sum asset on hand, ready to use or leave behind. So that's time, cash flow, and cash. That's your three levers. Okay. So here's why this corner matters to you. This corner is not about sorting your accounts out, it's about knowing yourself. And so the whole point is to service which of these three matters the most to you, because the answer shapes everything else. Someone who wants dependable income and someone who wants to leave the largest possible inheritance need very different pictures, even if they have the same pieces, right? So it's tempting to assume you want what everybody else seems to want, but one person lies awake worried their income won't last, and another barely thinks about monthly income and wants to leave as much as possible to their beloved niece or nephew or grandbabies or whatever, right? And so you may have the same starting pieces, but opposite pictures. And so you want to be honest with yourself about which one is really you. So you need to work through this based on your information. All right. And the other three corners that we discussed kind of bend around this one because time, cash flow, and cash all affect everything else. Okay. Now, let me read a quick stat and we'll jump into this next section here. But research around longevity is what I want to talk about here. So, longevity is why this corner in particular, corner number two, time, cash flow, cash, carries so much weight. A 65-year-old today has like roughly a 1 in 3 chance of living past 90 now. Technology's improved, nutrition is becoming more defined and accurate. And so for a married couple, the odds that at least one spouse does, it's way higher, right? So retirees who lean on guaranteed income tend to spend about twice as much, and they worry less doing it than those drawing from investments alone. So people who have a guaranteed income stream feel way more comfortable spending twice as much money as somebody who's just kind of pulling from here and there. So creating a foundation of guaranteed income really gives you the freedom and peace of mind that a lot of people are looking for. And that's something experiential that I've seen from meeting with, I don't know, thousands of retirees. So here's some questions to think about though. Of the three, time, dependable income, or lump sum, which matters most to me? And when I picture retirement going well, am I picturing a paycheck, a pile of money, or just some peace of mind? And what would have to be true for me to feel genuinely secure? Most people haven't asked that question. What would make me feel secure about my retirement? Not what someone told me to do, not what somebody else thinks, but working through this with somebody. What do I need for me to feel at peace, genuinely secure? And for a lot of people, it's income. You're used to income, and then when you retire, you end up with an income deficit. In fact, I was a little late getting on our call today because we were meeting with a retiree, and she is used to having $100,000 a year coming in, and Social Security is not going to get anywhere near that, right? So hopefully, you've got assets that are going to be able to bridge that gap to make up the income deficit that occurs when you no longer work. Okay, so let's go to our next section here. And this is a quick overview of the four money frameworks that we've now placed into our upcoming book release called The Box Top. So, what does it cost you in tax? What does it cost you in tax to retire? So, I want you to think about tax as three buckets, three categories, if you will. And you want to sort every account that you own into one of these three buckets. And at our office, we do this for you or in conjunction with you. But every dollar you own lives in one of these three buckets, okay? Now, here's the catch: the bucket, not the balance of the money, decides the smart move. And I can give you a quick example here in just a moment as soon as we go through these, okay? And it just happened right before the call. Using this exact framework, we were able to make this picture make sense, and we made some different decisions than we were going to originally. So you want to sort every account into one of these three buckets based purely on how it's taxed, okay? So qualified money, that money goes in before taxes were paid, and when it comes out, it is taxed as ordinary income. So required withdrawals waiting down the road, such as RMDs, would be an example of when that happens. So these accounts that are under qualified, I want you to think IRA, 401k, 403b, any kind of account where what you contributed to that account, you had no taxes paid before it went in, which means the type of tax that you would deal with is income tax. Okay. Now, furthermore, we have a non-qualified account or bucket, and non-qualified money is after-tax money where only the gains or interest get taxed. And so some examples of these would be your checking account, savings account, CDs, broker accounts. You could have just taken money out of your checking account and invested it into a Robinhood account. That would be an example of non-qualified, okay? And what happens is, where on qualified you have an income tax. The income tax has already been settled in a non-qualified bucket. And then the only thing that's taxed after you decide to take some of that money out is capital gains tax, okay? Now, capital gains tax is different than income tax, okay? Capital gain tax is a one-time tax, all right? It's a different type of tax as well. Now, the next bucket here is tax privileged. Money grows and comes out tax-free only when it's set up correctly. Some examples of tax privileged money would be loans. A loan is tax privileged. A loan is always tax-free. Roth accounts would be considered tax privileged. So that after the fact consequences. So once the money's been put in, whenever you draw some out on the back end, when you pull the money out, what is the tax consequence? If it's tax-free, then it falls into tax privileged, okay? So tax privileged money grows and comes out tax-free when it's set up correctly. Some examples of that are life insurance. You can borrow from your cash value. Since that is a loan, that is a way for it to come out tax-free. And any insurance payment is always tax-free, which is tax privileged money. A Roth account would be another great example of that, okay? And I don't want to get into charities and all this other stuff, so let's just keep it simple. For the majority of folks, tax privileged money is probably going to be a Roth or life insurance, okay? You could also utilize lines of credits and things like that, but the big ones are cash value in your life insurance and Roth, okay? Now, why does this particular corner about taxes matter? Well, that one's obvious. Uncle Sam is going to reach in your cookie jar and take all the cookies out if you don't control how much comes out every year. So most people have never seen their money sorted this way, and that's why the picture is almost always lopsided. So the typical saver, when they're approaching retirement, is heavily concentrated in the qualified bucket. They've always contributed to their 401k. And then they're genuinely disturbed or surprised to learn how much of that particular balance doesn't even belong to them because of how much belongs to the government. So because you have this thing called RMDs, required minimum distributions, of when you turn age 73, the government is going to require you to take out a minimum amount to distribute to yourself to make sure you pay them what is due to them for your income tax on that. Okay? Now, the reason that is important to bring up is because it's going to happen. And if you must meet the requirements of RMDs, then you might as well build it into your strategy and use it to your advantage, right? So with that being said, let me explain what happened earlier today to kind of drive home this whole conversation here. So this lady come in, she's, always contributed to her 401k. And the big thing was all of her money, or at least 90% of it, was sitting in the qualified bucket, right? So if almost all of this is in the qualified bucket here, that tells us that what I mentioned here is true. That right here, most people have never seen their money sorted this way, and most people are heavily concentrated in the qualified bucket. And it's because the majority of people are W-2 income earners and they work for an employer, and they just have not intentionally sought out things ahead of time. Most people wait until they're starting to consider retirement, but you don't want to wait until you're in the retirement red zone, which is 5 years before your target retirement date and 5 years after. You don't want to wait till the red zone to start to worry about all this. You want to do it ahead of time. So maybe you could diversify. Maybe you could go ahead and start doing intentional Roth conversions, which would give you more tax privileged money, which makes your CPA and retirement planner's job way easier of figuring out how to do tax sequencing for you, which is where we plan your income and mitigate taxes where possible or eliminate if possible. So far, we've covered 3 frameworks. The first one was the rung, the liquidity ladder, showing the positioning of your money and that you should spend from the bottom up, and that the top usually produces income to replenish the bottom. So if you have to pull liquidity from the top rungs, it usually hurts how much income can be produced back to your checking account. The second corner was time, cash flow, cash. It was the three levers and which one matters most to you. Remember, it was talking about people when they are working, they are essentially trading their time for income. And then when they decide they want to retire, the flip or the switch here becomes I turn the time lever off and I turn on the cash lever to create my cash flow. All right, so think of the outer 2 levers, time and cash, as the ones that turn the cash flow on. So if you don't have one of those pulled, the cash flow it turns off. All right. So that one's important because you need all 3. And then we got down to the taxes. That's obviously important because you can't get away from it. And then lastly, but not least, it's how's your money working? All right. So remember, corner number 1 showed you where each dollar is positioned or sits. And this corner is asking you something different. What job is your dollar actually doing? So money can be put to work in 3 ways: safety, growth, or access. So safety is protection of principal, growth is accumulation, and access is like liquidity. I can reach it. So every dollar you have is doing one of these 3 jobs, okay? And you want to try to prioritize these 3. What's most important to you? 1 through 3, rank them. Now, you're going to need all 3, and you're probably going to have all 3 in retirement, or at least I hope so. But this is important that you prioritize or rank them based on most important to you, because it tells you more accurately what you need to be successful in retirement, and it might point you to a product solution too. So corner number 1 mapped where your money sits today, the rungs, from check-in up to the most protected top, which could have been like a business or something like that. And then this corner is asking you how much of your money should be doing each job. And that's why you want to rank them. Okay. And I heard an old saying one time. I want to say it was on a podcast, but it was essentially a contractor speaking to somebody about building their project. And I believe it went like this. He said, you can have things done one of 3 ways, but you can't have all 3. 1, you can have it done quick. Number 2, you can have it done right, high quality, right? Or number 3, you can have it done cheap. So you got to pick 2 out of 3, but you can't have all 3. It's kind of like this, except you're going to have all 3 showing in retirement, but you're not going to be able to get 100% of all 3. You're going to have to prioritize and then tier them, and then that's going to be able to inform how your retirement plan should look. And so this corner matters because the trap is having everything doing one job by accident. Hopefully you got all 3. Usually people have a combination of all 3, but sometimes it's not. And so you don't want all safety because your money would never grow. Inflation would eat that up. You don't want all growth because a bad year could really get you, because if it's all exposed for accumulation, that means it's probably exposed to market volatility or loss. And then if you had everything like 100% access, everything can be accessible, then there's no engine working for your future. And what I have found that is that very few people choose their mix on purpose. They just set up their 401k a long time ago, or put something into a position, and then they never changed gears. It just stayed in the same position. And we all know that retirement has different seasons. Life has different seasons. So I like to say that retirement planning is kind of like flying a plane. You have launch or takeoff. You have that transition space where you're now starting to hit cruising altitude. Then you're at cruising altitude, 35,000 feet or something to that effect. And then you have the landing. And retirement is a lot like moving from 30,000 feet into the landing stage. You don't go to land a plane the same way you were flying it at 35,000 feet. You're not running wide open, at 400, 500 miles an hour. You're slowing down, and you're paying attention to more details. You're using more tools. You're having to use different mechanics inside the plane that you would not use while you're ascending. While you are descending, there becomes a stage where the landing gear comes out and things change quite a bit. You must put a seatbelt on. You must pay attention to the signage that illuminates when the pilot says, "Oh, we're having turbulence. I need you to put the seatbelt on. Oh, we're approaching our landing. We're approaching our descent." So for a fact, once you begin to land a plane, pilots know for a fact that it is the most detailed situation in the flight. More things come into play. So say you're at 35,000 feet, a small error is just a bit of a correction on your flight path, right? Where a small error at 500 feet instead of 35,000 feet becomes, life threatening. Okay. So the margin for error when you're nearing the retirement red zone 5 years prior to your retirement date and the 5 years after is where you need to be changing gears. The retirement red zone is you are in your descent about to land, and your seatbelt needs to be buckled up. The pilots need to be checking different things. So it's the same way for retirement. You're no longer in your accumulation phase. You are in a descending phase, and all the safety settings that you had at 35,000 feet, everything becomes totally different when you begin to land the plane. And that's what you're doing when you say that you are ready to retire. So some things that you need to be thinking about is not just your Medicare, not just insurance for your spouse, not just how much money do I have, but how much money of my money is going to go to the government based on what I want to do with it. So the lady that we talked to earlier, one of the things that she wanted to do was pay her daughter's house off. But to pay her daughter's house off would have caused her to not only have to liquidate money out of an IRA or retirement type of account, qualified money, it would cause her to have a higher income tax because she was going to pull out like 120 grand. And the interest rate on this might have been 8%, where the tax rate on her doing that would have been like 18%. And so we were able to save 10% in taxes by controlling how much we take out. So now we're just going to make sure her asset can forever and ever, amen, pay that payment. And then every once in a while, she can double down on that payment if she would like. So, she changed her tune once we use these frameworks because it just makes sense. You're not going to want to give the government 20% or 15%, not even 10% if I ain't got to, because I earned it, not the government. And the government has their hand out for a lot of different types of taxes, whether it's state or federal. So we were able to craft right there on the spot a very, very simple plan to mitigate that particular tax just by addressing the same concern in a different way. And so you just need to be able to define what it is you need to solve for. And what our box top method does is it's a guaranteed process that does that hits all the corners of the picture and then allows you to step into retirement with full clarity. And the reason that clarity is important is because it creates confidence. And confidence makes decision-making much more simple. And once decisions are made more effectively and efficiently, it gives you peace of mind because you feel confident And clarity, confidence leads to peace of mind. All right. My name's Justin Stark. I'm the owner and founder of Pontotoc Insurance Agency. And today we've covered a proprietary way that we go through retirement planning with some of our clients. Obviously, a very high level view, but it's something that we practice here all the time. And in fact, if you're looking for help with any of those things, be sure to reach out to us. The best way to reach to us is our phone number. You can call us at 662-200-2249. You can comment here or message us. And also you can reach us at info@pontotocinsuranceagency.com, or obviously go to our website and reach out to us there at